The bright lights of Ireland's Got Talent filled the entire auditorium as the next contestant was announced. A soft hush fell over the crowd when a small boy, no more than 9 years old, stepped nervously onto the stage. His name was Aidan Cruz, from Manila, Philippines. His clothes were simple, an old white shirt tucked into faded shorts, and a pair of slippers that looked too worn for the big stage. In his tiny hands, he carried a tattered deck of playing cards, the edges bent and taped together. The crowd stared curiously, some smiling, others wondering how such a small, poor-looking boy had made it all the way to this grand platform in Ireland. Simon Cowell leaned forward with interest, resting his chin on his hand. "Hello, young man," he said in his deep voice. "What's your name and where are you from?" Aidan swallowed hard and answered softly, "I'm Aidan, sir, from Manila. I do magic to help my mama sell food on the street." The audience murmured gently. A few people clapped quietly in encouragement. Judge Amanda smiled kindly. "That's very sweet, Aidan. Are you ready to show us your magic?" Aidan nodded, his little hands shaking. He placed the deck of cards on the table, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. The music started, a calm, emotional melody that slowly filled the air. When he opened his eyes again, something changed in them. There was courage. He lifted one card, and suddenly it burst into a soft golden light. The audience gasped. With another gentle movement of his hand, the light formed into the shape of a small dove made entirely of sparkles. The glowing bird floated above his head, flapping softly, and landed near the judge's table. When it touched down, it turned into a folded paper heart. The audience was in awe, their earlier doubt replaced with amazement. Simon's expression changed from curiosity to quiet wonder. Aidan continued, whispering softly in Tagalog, "Para kay mama, for my mother." He lifted his final card. This time, it began to glow brightly until an image appeared on its surface, his mother's smiling face under a Manila sunset. The audience fell silent for a moment, then erupted into cheers. Some people were standing, clapping and wiping their tears. Amanda covered her mouth, visibly emotional. One of the judges whispered, "That's real magic, straight from the heart." Simon nodded slowly, eyes glistening, and said, "Aidan, you didn't just perform magic, you made us feel something. That was beautiful." Aidan smiled shyly, tears in his eyes. "Thank you, sir. I just wanted to show that even poor kids can dream." His voice trembled, and the hall fell quiet again. The audience began chanting his name, Aidan. Aidan. Aidan, as he bowed deeply. His mother stood in the audience, crying and smiling at the same time. As he walked off the stage, still clutching his old deck of cards, the golden lights faded slowly behind him. In that moment, the little boy from the streets of Manila had cast the most powerful magic of all. He had touched the hearts of everyone in Ireland. Backstage, the lights were dim and the crowd's cheers still echoed through the walls. Aidan stood there frozen, clutching his old deck of cards to his chest. His hands trembled, his face pale, but his eyes shimmered with disbelief. He could still hear the chants from the audience calling his name. His mother ran toward him, tears spilling down her cheeks, and wrapped him in a tight hug. For a few seconds, he couldn't breathe, not from fear, but from the overwhelming feeling that something beautiful had just happened. The camera zoomed in as Aidan whispered, "Mama, did they really like it?" His mother nodded, her voice breaking. "They didn't just like it, Anak, they loved you. You made them see your heart. Out on the stage, the judges were still talking about what they had just witnessed. Amanda was wiping her eyes, completely moved. He didn't just perform tricks, she said softly. He shared his soul. The other judges nodded in agreement, and Simon remained quiet for a moment, staring at the empty stage where Aidan had stood just minutes ago. He finally spoke, voice lower and gentler than usual. You know, sometimes the biggest magic doesn't come from power or money. It comes from pain, from hunger, from hope. That kid has all three. The cameras cut back to Aidan as the show host called him to return to the stage. The crowd's roar returned, even louder this time. Aidan stepped back out, his tiny figure illuminated under the golden lights. His eyes sparkled with tears as he waved shyly at the judges. Simon leaned forward, his expression softening completely. Amanda stood up, her hand over her heart. Aidan, what you did tonight was something I'll never forget, she said, her voice cracking. You reminded us what real magic feels like. The music began again, slow and emotional, and the moment grew still. The host asked the judges for their final thoughts, but before anyone could speak, Amanda reached over and pressed the golden buzzer. The stage exploded into gold confetti. The audience jumped to their feet, screaming and cheering. Aidan froze, eyes wide open, as glitter fell around him like a golden rain. He looked up, unable to hold back his tears, then turned toward his mother in the crowd. She was crying uncontrollably, her hands covering her mouth. Simon stood up, clapping slowly, eyes misty. He walked to the center of the judges' table and looked at Aidan. Aidan, he said, his voice shaking slightly, what you just did wasn't a performance. It was a miracle. You've made us believe again. Aidan fell to his knees on the stage, crying with joy, as his mother ran to embrace him. Cameras captured the hug, the poor boy from the streets of Manila now covered in gold, holding his mother's hand, both crying under the bright lights. And as confetti swirled around them, the world watched one of the most emotional moments in Ireland's Got Talent history, when a 9-year-old Filipino magician proved that dreams can shine brighter than gold. The night after the golden buzzer, Dublin was alive with excitement. Clips of Aidan's performance had already gone viral. On television screens, in cafes, and across social media, his trembling smile and glowing dove of light replayed again and again. News anchors called him the miracle boy from Manila. People in Ireland couldn't stop talking about him, the child magician who performed not just tricks, but hope itself. Back in his small dressing room, Aidan sat quietly on a stool, his old card still in his hands. His mother gently combed his hair with her fingers, tears drying on her cheeks. You did it, Anik, she whispered. You showed the world your heart. Aidan smiled shyly and said, Mama, maybe now I can buy you a real cart for your food stall. She laughed softly through her tears and hugged him again. Outside, the judges were being interviewed backstage. Amanda was still visibly emotional. That little boy reminded us that talent has no border, no wealth, no limit. He made me cry, and that almost never happens, she said, laughing nervously. Another judge added, it wasn't the magic, it was his story. He came from nothing, and yet he gave us everything. Simon, sitting beside them, stayed quiet for a moment. The reporter turned to him. Simon, what made Aidan's act so special for you? Simon looked directly into the camera, his eyes softer than ever before. I've seen hundreds of magicians, he said slowly, but Aidan, he didn't perform for fame. He performed for love. When you see a child using pain to create beauty, that's not just talent. That's a miracle. The next day, headlines spread across both Ireland and the Philippines. Poor Filipino boy brings judges to tears, read one. Aidan's magic unites two worlds, read another. People began sending messages of support and donations to help his family. Aidan and his mother were overwhelmed. They stood outside the theater, watching the Irish crowd cheering and calling his name. For the first time in his life, Aidan felt seen, not as a poor child from Manila, but as someone who mattered. Later that evening, he was invited to appear on a live show segment. Standing once again under the spotlight, Aidan thanked everyone softly. "When I started learning magic," he said, "I only wanted to make people smile, because I didn't have much. But now, I know that when you believe, even just a little, magic becomes real." The audience applauded, some crying again. As the show ended, Aidan stood on the stage holding his mother's hand. The lights dimmed slowly, leaving only a single spotlight over them. The camera zoomed in on Aidan's deck of cards, still old, still taped, still imperfect, glowing faintly in the light. Simon's voice echoed softly from offstage, "Sometimes the smallest light shines the brightest." And as the credits rolled, the final image remained, a little Filipino boy smiling under golden confetti, his dream shining brighter than any illusion, his story forever engraved in the hearts of millions.